a little spot. It's a beautiful island that you've never seen. Where America's never gets old. 7:35 KUAM News containing COVID multimedia show. Good morning. Let's jump over the phones. Vice Speaker Telena Nelson. Good morning, Vice.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Sabrina. Good morning, Chris.
I guess, first of all, we want to just, before we get into the veto and all that stuff, what are your thoughts on this issue with the Catholic Church asking public health and the governor for the ability to resume spiritual services and sacraments while observing all of the different mandates with social distancing and the use of PPEs?
No, I think it's very important because the people are suffering, and if God pulls us through many of the sufferings in our life, and if we can keep stores open, there's no reason why we cannot keep our church open. Mm-hmm. So I humbly, implore the Archbishop to continue to seek this, to allow the people to be able to celebrate the Eucharist. We need to know that God's presence is there, and we need to receive the Eucharist.
Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer, right, Vice?
Yeah.
How do you tell the church no like that when you tell them the business yes? Okay, so now on to...
for all denominations.
Right, yeah, of course, yeah.
For everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 7:37, so let's get into the veto.
Bill 326. This was your bill, right?
Well, it's passed by the 35th Guam legislature, so it's all of our bills.
Yeah, passed unanimously.
Yes.
Were you surprised? Shocked?
I was a little bit surprised. I'm disappointed. This was a bipartisan measure, and we worked very hard on this bill. We consulted with our legal, and it was about a day and a half that we took of session time to ensure that this bill was done properly. We didn't cut any corners, and it was a bipartisan measure. I'd like to thank all my colleagues for believing in this. But so this is part of the democratic process, but this does not mean that we're going to stop advocating for these things. We're introducing another measure to ensure we get the hazardous pay, and we're watching very closely to see what happens with the double time. Mm-hmm. We're not going to give up. The people have put themselves on the line, and this is the least that we can do for those that have stood in the way of this, enemy, and provided this safe barrier for us to be able to live in, and so this is the least we can do.
Vice, so what did you make of the veto message? I mean, it's just basically was... Sorry, that wasn't supposed to be a punchline, but the gist of it was like, okay, you want to pay the double? You want to pay the double pay? It's $36 million. If we pay this, we're going to have to furlough everybody, and guess what? Mm-hmm. It's going to be the senator's fault.
You didn't give us a funding source.
Yeah, so what did you make of all that?
Well, my grandmother once told me that no is never an answer. There's always a way. And so I'm going to find that way. And I hope that we can find a way to get at least the hazardous pay money to them, and then to ensure to see what this federal reimbursement on the double time will do. I mean, I've been guaranteed by people that work directly with FEMA that this is reimbursable because it's already in statute.
Right.
And so, we're going to keep a close eye on it. Yeah, that everyone has a technique. Mm-hmm. So, for those words, I have no word for those words.
Right. Yeah.
So, just currently, what does the law allow when a state of emergency is declared? Because aside and separate from the Category 1 category, the sliding scale.
Right.
Payment that the governor was asking for?
Well, that was an executive order, the Category 1. So the law doesn't allow for that. Mm-hmm. What is currently in the rules, just the part that we've been really mulling over is the double time. So you either receive double time or compensatory hours when we go into a state of emergency, for those specifically that are helping directly with the state of emergency. And so, the option is the compensatory hours or double time. And it would be challenging for the individuals to take compensatory time off if they have to use it before the fiscal year ends. And so that's something that we're looking into, just in case the government gives like that option available, because they're saying that there's no money for double time.
Right.
Yeah, so
the law allows for it currently allows for and authorizes double time for essential workers or compensatory.
Is it the law, Senator, or is it just like personnel rules and regs?
Oh, it's a GAR. It's a GAR. I don't have it on me right now, the specific, but it's 8.406 in the GAR.
What GAR is?
The rules.
Okay. What does it stand for? I don't even.
Okay, so I think Guam Administrative Rules.
Okay.
And that is a law.
It's codified within the GAR, which is a part of
the rules and personnel rules and regs, basically.
Right.
Okay. So it allows for the double pay. And
it allows for double time or compensation.
Yeah, I just feel like people look at us like we got three eyes when we talk about double pay, but I know that there are many government employees out there who have gotten it during emergencies, who have been expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
And in autonomous agencies, yeah.
And they're not getting it. And, now I feel like the government...
So autonomous agencies have gotten it?
Well, I'm hearing that, I believe GPA, which they're giving it out. They made whole or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's see. What about the airport, the Port Authority?
Well, we're going to find out, because we're going into Committee on Rules today to be able to have the ability to have virtual meetings. Mm-hmm. And so we're ready. We've alerted I alerted all of my oversight committees to let them know that we're going to have several budget hearings and also COVID response hearings to see so the people can see the work that they've done.
Mm-hmm. What's the reaction from the administration, Vice? Because, they roundly rejected some bills from some of your colleagues that, called for more transparency. And I was thinking this morning on my way to work, so we have the public, we have mayors, we have doctors, we've got senators, all saying the same thing. There's not enough transparency coming from this administration. So you want to have these oversight hearings, these budget hearings. How realistic is it that you guys are going to get Lester Carlson, you're going to get Ed Byrne down there, or, on a Zoom or whatever?
Well, this is, I hope that they come without any resistance, because we're in a state of emergency, and a lot of information is being left out that the people would like to know. And usually in times of emergency, people are calmed by more information, where they understand the logic and the purpose of why you do things, where they see the mission and the purpose and the task that you're performing and the purpose for that task. And so it would behoove them to come and present themselves. I mean, we don't want to go with this back and forth and have to subpoena these people to be there. That's just it's uncalled for. It's not a better practice to do, especially during these times. If we could just be present, and if Lester Carlson can say to our face, there's no money, then I hope he's present to do that, than just with the letter.
But what would your response be, though, if they were to come to you and say, well, we are in a state of emergency, that's why we're not giving you everything, because we are dealing with this state of emergency?
I think they have a handle, it's already after the first month, and so usually in the first month, when you have a transition of some sort, or you go into an environment that you're not familiar with, the first month you usually create a battle rhythm. And so I believe they have a handle on this battle rhythm. I believe they understand where this pandemic is going. I believe they understand that the resources are coming, and I'm sure they have a plan in place on how they're going to spend the resources, and there's federal guidelines for that, or the revenue, how they're going to spend it. So there should be a battle rhythm. We should not be living in chaos after the first month anymore.
Right. So you're saying, Vice, that
responding to the emergency, I don't think that's
not an excuse.
Valid reason.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But, you're the vice chair of the Committee on Public Safety. Are you aware of any of those agencies under your purview have received the double pay? Because I believe some of them are frontliners and essential employees, like GPD, for example.
Right. So we have to double check on these things, because we're not given the information, and that's why we're going to Committee on Rules to call these the chiefs forward and the directors forward to give an explanation.
Mm-hmm. No one's called you, though?
No one has informed me of that.
Wow.
Wasn't there a letter? Isn't there a letter that was sent to this dear governor?
Yeah, there was a new Dear Governor letter yesterday, Vice, and now, Adelup messed up because they responded to that first Dear Governor letter, and now every Dear Governor letter that comes out, they got to respond to it. And so actually, I'm going to go ahead and read this out to you. Vice, I don't know if you got this.
Did you see it?
No, I did not read it.
Okay, I'm going to read it out to you, okay? Whoever wrote this is on point. Help our first responders. Dear Governor, we feel abandoned in this war against the invisible enemy on our island, most especially after you vetoed Bill 326-35. Governor, you asked us first responders to help you. We are. You asked us to support your executive orders to keep the public safe. We are. We have given so much support that we leave our families to fend for themselves while we're on the front line in this mass time of fear and unknown in the world. Then we risk potentially exposing our families to COVID-19 because our government has no supply of PPEs. You still asked us to continue with the frontline mission, knowing we do not have the proper personal protective equipment. We have continued in the frontline mission day and night, waiting. You told us not to worry. COVID-19 compensation for first responders will come. It hasn't. You told us not to worry. Differential pay will come. It hasn't. So here we are in the front line of this pandemic, still waiting. I wait alongside my fellow first responders, forced to reuse PPEs for days at a time, forced to purchase our own cleaning and sanitizing agents because the government has no steady supply, and having to buy additional provisions for family and friends that help care for our children while we're on the front line. First responders make contact with hundreds of people in a single day for emergency calls and criminal complaints. Public safety agencies across the USA have implemented various types of differential pay and are actively paying their first responders because they're all aware there's a higher risk of exposure to frontliners. So here we are in week 7 of this crisis, still doing our part. Now it is time for you to do yours. Do what is right and compensate first responders as promised and as written in DOA's rules and regulations at double rate of pay. We earn the compensation and we've waited far too long. Also, GovGuam employees are furloughed as a result of COVID-19. Does this mean you'll create local stimulus or more unemployment programs? Asking for a friend. Please join me in sending this message to our governor. Copy and paste and keep this going. Help our first responders. So and I got a response from Carla Branch, who's Adelup's Director of Policy here. COVID differential pay is to be paid next week. The measure was vetoed to prevent massive furloughs or layoffs because of costs the legislature was not aware of prior to the passage of the amended bill. The governor also transmitted a bill to accomplish the goal of paying front lines retroactively to the start of the emergency. So I guess just first, what do you make of all that?
I'll believe it when I see it. And, yeah, we're trying on our end also to help our first responders. But, we have been asking, especially Senator Terlahi has been asking about the status of the PPEs. And so that's a concern for me because we're hearing that they have enough PPEs, and I believe Sergeant Esteves is tracking that there's PPEs.
Right.
He's the one that's basically tracking the whole and the
inventory and all that. Right.
Yeah. So he says that there's PPEs. So that's something that we need to look into because if there's someone that's in the front line that's not getting their PPE, then that's definitely where the chief or the director needs to come in and ensure that the safety of the people. Safety is always the first thing when you go into a mission. Mm-hmm. Is safety first, safety first, safety first. And if we can't provide for them the tools and resources for safety first, then we should not be sending them into that mission.
Vice, what are you hearing, though? Because I hear it, too. I hear frontliners say we don't have PPEs. You see it, and
well, we got a breakdown. We got a breakdown.
Yeah, we do. So maybe it's a problem with them getting them out to the first responders. I mean, are they sitting in a container somewhere? Because, we could have 50 million PPEs, but if they're not getting to the people who need them.
They got 56,000 N95 masks, 25,000 surgical masks, 10,000 surgical gowns, 8,000 face shields, 93,000 gloves, 59 ventilators. These are all from FEMA. It's the breakdown that FEMA gave us.
But is that what
but
you
I
hear?
don't know what the surgeon cell has on their end.
Is that what you hear, Vice, that there are frontliners out there who don't have the PPEs?
No, I'm hearing that they are disposing of it. They even have one of the higher echelon people in GFD following them around, making sure that they decontaminate properly after a patient. So, I mean, I'm hearing that they have PPE, but if this is the case where someone is saying that they're not, then I'll call the chiefs this morning and I'll ask my colleagues for their oversight, who has oversight over the hospital and stuff, if we can really ask them if they need this PPE, because we're not hearing that just through this letter, and no one has, at least for me, no one has contacted me directly. But we'll get to the bottom of it.
Right. What do you make of this quarantine? The cost of quarantine, Vice Speaker, is as I'm pretty sure you're aware, there was a transfer of $7 million that was made on what day was it? April 2nd, and this was to address the mandatory quarantine protocol
and a temporary hospital.
A temporary hospital program, which we don't. Does that even exist, Bree?
I don't know.
I don't know what that temporary hospital program is.
Yeah, and also this is what they took the
Maybe
$7 million.
Trying to build something.
Address mandatory quarantine protocol, temporary hospital program, and associated cost requirements.
And they took the money from all these different agencies.
Commission on Decolonization.
Charter school.
Charter schools, yeah. So that's $7 million, and then we obtained this document, basically an invoice from Pacific Star to Linda, and it's for a couple weeks here, and the bill's over $500,000, and so this was something that was sent out on March 26th. So I guess if you do the math, it's 1 point something million. Given a Pacific Star, who, coincidentally, I did the research. The family that owns this, they donated a lot of money to Lou and Josh campaign. So
wait, that was March what?
March 26th?
March 26th. The letter came out on April 2nd for the $7 million transfer for
you got a little timeline here.
Well,
yeah,
you can see it yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So the letter to Pacific Star charging DPHSS $544,000 was written a few days before they took the $7 million from all the different agencies.
And I think you have to notify the legislature or whoever when you make a transfer, at least within 5 days. Is that correct? After the transfer is made?
Yes. So Senator San Augustine is going to have an SES because he's very he wants to know also why this amount of money was spent and where all the money came from, because remember, we still also have an unknown answer for where did they take the money from for the war reparations. We don't know that either, and we're still waiting for the war reparations money to come in. So it does seem like our budget for FY 2020 is going to be greatly, FY 2021 is going to be greatly impacted. So the SCS meeting is coming up as soon as we solidify the new rules to go into a virtual. Thanks to Senator Lee, who's the community rules chair. She worked really hard to get our rules ready and the SOPs ready so that we can have virtual hearings. So as soon as that's done today, you'll see all of us in there having virtual hearings and getting the answers that we need.
Right.
Well, I noticed there was already one scheduled for May 6th. There was a virtual public hearing.
So I think that I don't know if they're going to do if they're going to enact that or if they're going to if they're going to move it to a later date, but it's going to happen immediately.
Okay.
Vice, we had a comment here on the Facebook page, and it was regarding the double time, and basically, man, it's way back up there, but this person had commented something along the lines of, okay, government employees, thousands of non-essential GovGuam workers are staying home, they're getting a paycheck. Essential workers are supposed to be getting this COVID hazard differential pay. Now we're trying to give them double pay. What about the private sector? They're kind of left out of the loop. Is anyone going to bat for the people who don't work for the government of Guam? Because there's a lot of those people. Well,
actually, in the hazardous pay bill, it included the private sector employees, those responding to COVID-19. And that was removed through an amendment from one of my colleagues. I can't remember who at this time. But there was some concern that the businesses were not informed, and
Yeah.
there's some concern whether government would be able to supplement it.
Right, yeah.
And because the bill didn't have a public hearing, you know, that's where we stood. And
Right, yeah. And I think maybe
but
the
we are focusing on those that are out there. You know, we're trying to. We don't know the answer and how they will be justly compensated, but we are looking. They're not left out of our mind.
Right. I just think when we asked the governor and she says apply for food stamps and there's no local aid and we're sitting on $117 million from the federal government that they said we can use for financial aid. They said we could use for mass feedings. But, you know, every time we ask about it, it's like we get our head bit off. So that's what I think this commenter is saying is that, you know, with private sector, people, workers who have been furloughed, displaced, hours cut, nobody's really doing anything for them, yet we're jumping over ourselves to give GovGuam their double pay they deserve. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but I'm just saying you can see how people in the private sector are looking at this. Because there's no one's doing anything for them.
You know, yeah, this is the time for information sharing, and we did we had this bill we had the unemployment bill, and we included those that were we included it to be a supplement bill also, which included those that were also furloughed, and we're not getting any information from Guam Department of Labor. We're not getting any information from USDOL, and now I'm hearing that there's a complex process before we can even implement any type of assistance through the pandemic unemployment assistance. And so really, this is, you know, in the military, sometimes they hide information, so I don't know. Anyway, so
okay.
there's information.
Right. Vice, we're up against the top of the hour, so let me just ask you. We had Speaker Tina Munia Barnes. She wrote a letter to Public Auditor BJ Cruz, you know, basically saying, hey, get out there, go to these agencies, do performance, find out what the hell's going on out there. We've got you calling for more transparency. You know, Senator Teresa Lai, the Health Committee chair, yesterday on the show had said that she's going to continue to hound these guys. Now you guys, it looks like you're mobilizing with this Rules Committee meeting. Is this a sea change in the attitude of the legislature where, you know, before you had the Democratic leadership just doing whatever the governor said, and now it kind of seems like maybe they woke a sleeping giant? Is that what you think is going on with you and your colleagues? We have 2 minutes, Vice.
Well, I don't agree with the comment doing whatever the governor says, because many times I do not agree with the governor. I mean, you see it in the actions that are happening. But no, we've been asking for this transparency. Many of us have been writing letters every day, asking for this information, and we've actually been working towards getting virtual hearings since a month ago. But there was concern about the constitutional impact, and we even met with the NCSL to ensure that we can have a smooth transition and address all of these things so that we're not challenged in a court of law later on. And so that was really the crux of the issue. How do we move forward with the virtual meetings because of our laws? And so I guess we found a way through that, and it took some time, but this is something that we've been wanting to do. We've been talking about it almost every day. My colleagues and I are on Zoom calls and trying to work things out and move forward to have better transparency. So it's always been there. You just see the movement now because we found the answers that we've been looking forward to move forward, to move through this. And so it was just a matter of how do we do it. And so we found the path.
Because
right.
Like you said, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right. Yeah.
And now that all this funny business is coming out, where we're starting to see that, you know, people who are in are getting the benefits, reaping the millions of dollars. I think that there's blood in the water, and you guys gotta grow up here, for lack of a better term, and do the job and really just hold these people accountable, because that's what the public wants.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what the people